Hi, Jelena here. These are some of my insights from the Be a Great Project Manager Challenge. So I believe that being a good project manager takes a unique skill set, and that is something that people can develop over time if they put in the work and effort. And so, from what I had understood of the profession, basically, I knew that project managers need good communication skills and an ability to adapt to different situations and different types of working types and different types of communication. And then they also need a structured, methodical thinking, as well as the humility that it takes to keep pushing a project forward. And something that I was thinking about is that in the future, we're all going to have to be the project managers of our own lives and be able to intricately balance the demands and constraints of our resources and things like that. And so for some of the research for the project, I decided to ask my friend Priscilla, who is she's currently a marketing manager, but she began as a project manager. And so she told me before starting off the conversation that her work as a project manager definitely helped shape some of the skills that she would need, helped her shape and develop some of the skills that she would need in the manager role. So she said that you need to learn how to manage many projects at once, but not only that, but many processes at once. So having multiple tasks with different sort of frameworks and different levels of completion, as well as different teams. So she said that this sort of experience adds to any role that you would take on later on. And that totally makes sense to me. And so she also mentioned that relationship management is pretty key within the role because it helps you finish things faster or slower, depending on those types of relationships that you have and whether you're able to call upon them. So 3 of the most challenging things about being a project manager, according to her, were number 1, the lack of resources. So this applies to really any organization, but with a bunch of tasks and a bunch of campaigns to manage or whatever the project may be, there's a need to involve different people and different specialties. So that management of the lack of resources is probably the biggest challenge. And she mentioned that making use of any influence in relationships as well as adding buffers of time is really helpful, and basically to almost expect delays. And so the second most challenging thing was communication. So establishing the expectations and tasks and timelines via written word was something that she had mentioned she would do initially. And she had said that people would then forget. And so her practice has become sending things in writing and then talking to them in person just to remind them. And then as people do, they'll forget, and she can refer them back to the written email. So that was really interesting as well. And then the third challenging thing was just getting people to take ownership. So being client facing, project managers will have to take the heat sometimes if something doesn't go according to plan. So one thing that Priscilla has mentioned was that she'll try to get people who are specialists in their particular area to directly communicate with the client. And this gives them more responsibility and therefore a greater desire to put forth their best effort, and also just being able to understand the client more clearly. So moving on to the 3 most rewarding things about being a project manager, according to Priscilla. Number 1 was collaboration. So she had mentioned that talking to people and getting together with the team and brainstorming how to solve a problem and doing these things together, the creative process, and then seeing it all come to completion. She had mentioned that it's very rewarding to see the end result of the collaborative efforts. And the second thing she had mentioned was being able to train and mentor younger talent or newer talent. So Priscilla mentioned that she tries her best to help these newer project managers experience specific things and gives them like a high level, higher scope view of some of the ongoings of the business. And then she said that it was very rewarding to see how these younger PMs basically are rising up and developing their own skills. So the third thing that she mentioned was just the general overcoming of challenges. So be it conflict, which might arise between teams, restricted timelines, or just getting over specific regulatory hurdles or any day-to-day challenges that they may have. I suppose that as a PM, you play a pretty critical role. So that was something else that was mentioned. And so generally speaking, I do think that project management is a really important skill for all of us to really have. And as we go about our societal challenge and some of our group work, it's definitely helpful to incorporate some of the visual aspects for me, just to be able to segment and really break down projects and then delegate tasks and have an agreement on responsibility. It's something that's pretty critical to any sort of group work. So I really enjoyed this challenge for that reason. And yes, thank you very much for listening.